So you do it.
All right. Got to get to the first page. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our May 13th Town Council meeting. Before we begin, I just want to go through the emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency, there's two doors on your left, another door at the front of the council chambers. We would exit Town Hall, cross Middle Road, and meet at the school administration building and wait for further instruction. If we could now please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our men and women serving in harm's way. Okay, just a little more housekeeping. We are live streaming with Zoom tonight. For those of you participating on Zoom, there's an icon to raise your hand, indicate you'll have a question. If you're calling in on phone, *6 will allow you to mute and unmute your phone. *9 will indicate that you have a question. If you're participating remotely or in person tonight, please state your name and address for the town clerk. And with that, we will move on to our roll call.
Ms. Abbott? Here. Mr. Gleason?
Here.
Mr. Hamilton?
Here.
Mr. Levesque?
Yeah.
Dr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Aguiar?
Here. Okay, President's executive summary. We did not have any executive sessions prior to the council meeting, so I do not have any updates. With that, we will move on to our consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move that the items in the consent agenda be approved as printed.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we'll be sitting as the Board of License Commissioners. First item is an entertainment license.
They were all entertainment license on the first item.
Yep.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve all 5 entertainment licenses, one for Ragged Island Brewing, one for Portsmouth Youth Soccer Association, and 3 for Sunset Cove.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes
Mr.
6-0.
President, just
Yes.
a point of inquiry.
Sure.
The first one here, the Ragged Island, there are a number of conditions put on by the zoning board. Are those conditions part of our licensing? Because they actually have to do with police presence, personnel, et cetera. I believe they were at the suggestion of the department.
So, well, I believe this is just for the license for
This-
that event.
This is the entertainment license.
Yeah.
If they have more than 500 people, they're required to have an entertainment license.
They require what?
To have an entertainment license.
Right.
So that's why it's on there. And that means they have to have the police. It's part of the,
I think your other issue, I think, is going to come up with the zoning under the public hearing tonight. So we'll get to that a little
I
later.
apologize.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Back to Board of License Commissioners. The second item was the peddler's license annual.
Move that they be approved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Move to adjourn as the Board of License Commissioners.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we have minutes from our executive session on April 8th, and then regular minutes from April 22nd, April 23rd, and April 24th.
Mr. President, I move that they be approved as printed.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Actually, I need to recuse myself from that vote since I wasn't present for those meetings.
Or just, you could just abstain. You could still
You could
approve
just-
them.
You can
but-
still.
So it's
That's-
5-0-1 extension. Delayed.
Abstain, don't recuse, then you don't have to fill out paperwork.
No, you always have a conflict.
Okay. All right. We are moving on to our town administrator's report. Mr. Rayner.
Good evening, Mr. President, Town Council, ladies and gentlemen. With respect to the annual Portsmouth Award, we are now accepting nominations. Just as a reminder for everybody, if you don't know, this award is an annual recognition for an individual, a local business, or an organization that exemplifies the best characteristics of and for Portsmouth by consistently demonstrating excellence in professional and community leadership, which directly benefits the town. Details will be posted on the town website and in a pending press release. Nominations will be accepted through Friday, June 14th. I'd like to publicly congratulate our police chief, Colonel Brian Peters. Brian has been selected by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to represent Rhode Island at the National Command Course to be held this July in Woodbridge, Virginia. The National Command Course is a one-week leadership course hosted and funded by the FBI and is designed for police department leaders from across the country with fewer than 50 sworn officers. So congratulations. Very well done, Chief. At the last meeting, I announced that our DEM outdoor recreation grant application for the Turnpike Playground had been selected for approval. The town will be awarded $60,000 to be used on the community playground. Much of the work that the grant was applied for, specifically the recycled rubber surface and fencing, has already been completed. So we will work with DEM to ensure that the award can go back into the Four Hearts Fund to be used for other park enhancements. You may have noticed coming in tonight that the Town Hall South doors were replaced last week and are now compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The modification also included updated security measures. The doors will now automatically open and unlock during town hall business hours. The Director of Public Works and the town clerk will update appropriate committee chairs on the procedures required to open and close town hall for after-hour meetings. With respect to the harbor master, our HR director, the police chief, and the chair of the Harbor Commission have reviewed applications for the position, and a slate of candidates have been selected for interviews. The interviews will start this coming Wednesday, and we hope to have the position filled at the end of the month. With respect to recycling, we have 2 recycling events scheduled in the next month, in June. The first is a hard plastic collection event, which is scheduled for June 8th at the Headley Street Transfer Station. And the plastic will be collected from 8 to noon or until the container is filled. This event is only for residents with valid transfer station stickers. The second will be an electronic waste collection event at the Portsmouth High School on June 15th from 9 to 12 p.m., 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. This collection event is open to any Rhode Island resident. A truck will be stationed at the Prudence Island Transfer Station 1 week before the e-waste event to collect and transport e-waste to the high school for that scheduled event. More information is available on the town website. Additionally, Portsmouth has been named a 2023 Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation in honor of our commitment to effective urban forest management. The Tree City USA program is sponsored by the Arbor Day Foundation in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and the National Association of State Foresters. This is a noble achievement and reflects great credit on the work of our tree commission, the tree warden, and our Public Works Department. And lastly, the National Weather Service is predicting a particularly active hurricane season this year. So on behalf of our EMA director, Ray Perry, and as advertised in the Portsmouth Times, I just want to stress that on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, May 15th at 6:30 at the Common Fence Point Community Center, 6:30 p.m. at the Common Fence Point Community Center, the Portsmouth EMA will host a presentation on hurricane preparedness with an emphasis on evacuation decision-making and what businesses and residents should do before a hurricane strikes to be ready to apply for recovery assistance. So, Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Okay. We're going to jump right into old business. First item under old business is to provisionally approve the town budget. Mr. Rayner?
Hello again. If we could bring up the budget and turn to page 9 of the proposed budget. Thank you. Here you see the executive summary of the proposed budget that was discussed at the budget meetings held April 22nd through 24th. At those meetings, you provisionally approved each section of the proposed revenues and expenditures totaling $74,346,959 respectively. So at this point, I respectfully ask you to provisionally approve the proposed fiscal year 25 town budget of $74,346,959.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. President, I have several amendments. I believe I've advised all of my fellow council persons. And this should not come, I don't think, as a surprise to anyone who followed the budget process. But I have 4 amendments that I would like to make to the budget. The first was brought up and reflects a change in the school department budget as a bill came in increasing the amount of their health insurance coverage. Total bottom line increase of $58,000. I believe that everyone was in agreement, and the administrator can correct me if I'm wrong, that bill essentially came in after the town got the budget and the administrator was preparing for submission to us. And the town had a similar increase because I believe we still piggyback on the towns, and I think the town was able to accommodate it. So basically, I think, given that the real hard work that both the superintendent and the administrator did on the budget, but reflecting the change in circumstance, I would move that we add to the budget on the school side the amount of $58,000.
So that would need a second. There is no second.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, second for discussion. Okay. Sure.
Hi, good evening. Emily Copeland, 25 Windstone Drive, Portsmouth, Rhode Island, Chair of the Portsmouth School Committee. Thank you very much for making the motion for the 58,000. I really hope you consider that. As we mentioned, as the superintendent mentioned, we worked really, really hard this year to come in with a very conservative budget because we knew things were tight. We brought it down from 5.1% increase in expenditures to 3.9 to 3.1, and we were too conservative with the healthcare estimate, right? And I don't think we should be penalized for trying to really work with the town. And as was noted, the town was able to fold it into their estimate. I really was going to come up and speak tonight because I was very concerned at the last meeting where there was the assertion made that somehow it didn't matter. We had extra surplus and we padded the budget, and that is absolutely not true, right? I think that's really missing the point and insulting to the professionalism of the district. We worked since November to come up with this through meetings with the administrative team, with meetings of the finance committee, with the school committee. We've gone through 3 revisions and it just came in a little higher, right? The point was made, well, you have a surplus Well, maybe we do. We try hard not to overspend because that triggers all sorts of things, right? We stop really putting on the brakes in March and April to make sure that we don't overspend. But the point here is that every budget, every line item has an expense. And if we have to spend the 58,000 on a fixed cost, it means we're taking it away from something else, right? And I certainly don't think the right idea is to send the signal to the schools that if you don't spend every penny, you're going to get penalized by the town because you have a surplus. You should be singing our praises that we try and do this, because that way, when there is an emergency like the septic failing at the high school, we can pay for it without having to come to the town, right? So we work better together. We've really tried hard to work with the town in maintenance and technology. And I feel like this is a time where, okay, the bill came in, the estimate came in a little later, and let's recognize that and add it in. And if by some miracle, the state gives us a little bit extra money than we're expecting, you know, that will lower the cost and you can claw that back. But it is a fixed cost, and I would appreciate it if you consider approving it. And thank you for making the resolution.
Mr. President, I just want to make, I guess, one point in conclusion. There was a lot of concern within, particularly the people looking at the state budget, that there was going to be revenue shortfalls that might have an additional impact. According to the paper today, that has not occurred. In fact, they are looking at a surplus for both this year and for the coming year. So that is not a concern. There was also attention drawn to a bill that was put in to markedly change the way that we get reimbursed for the tangible personal property. I looked at that bill that brought to our attention by the administrator properly. And I looked at the bill, and the sponsors are serious people, Scott Slater, Representative Scott Slater, and Representative DeSimone. It's only a Providence contingent. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do, but the Finance Committee already heard the bill and decided to hold it for further study. That doesn't necessarily mean it's over, but if it didn't come in with the governor's budget, I don't really think it's going to happen. But if something happens in that regard between now and the final approval, I assure you that I'll be willing to look at that. If in fact we now have some form of deficit imposed upon us by getting less revenues than we anticipated. And again, I think in fairness, the people in this town have a right to expect that we will be, we used to have an expression when I was a kid, fair is fair. If you go into a process and you do it in good faith and then something changes, you adjust to it. So I would ask you to support the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion from councilors?
No, I mean, other than I was the one that railed against it the hardest, I guess. And it's improper for me to go line by line in terms of the school budget, but I still think there's $58,000. And putting it onto the school budget we wouldn't be able to claw it back. So to say we could claw it back wouldn't really happen. So if you were to make this motion, I would not put it onto the school budget, you would put it onto the town budget. And then if they came this time next year and there was going to be a shortfall, then we could utilize that money.
I don't understand your point, Mr. Hamilton, for this reason. We are approving a provisional. We will go to final approval. If at that time of the final approval, we determine that this was not the appropriate thing to do, we can just remove it from the budget. It's not a clawback. By the same token, I will tell you, if you give the school department money for a particular activity and they don't use it for that activity, then the next time they appear before us, we can say, well, you told us you were going to do a particular activity and you did not. Therefore, we are upset and we are not going to give you that money again. this $58,000 particularly, it's gonna pay a bill. We have no doubt or question about that, so.
Mr. Gleason?
I just think we're at the point where we're proving provisionally. There's a lot of gives and takes that have gone on already. And we've got 4 items that have just been brought before us in the last couple hours. And I'm not going to deviate from the budget. So I'm nothing against the school department but I'm going to vote against all 4 suggested items.
I would point out, there was no give and take. I think, Mr. Administrator, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we approved pretty much your budget, start to finish, as proposed. I don't remember anything other than if you suggested it to us that we took away from that.
What I was trying to say was, Mr. Rayner I'm sure he had 3, 4 months, 5 months of gives and takes with his own departments of people that would want to have an extra truck or do something different with their department that have already been shot down, that would like to see money as well. That was my point.
All right.
Sorry, Mr. Rayner, for interrupting you. You wanted to
No,
comment?
both points are true.
All right, I would just like to add, I too was opposed to this when it came up during the discussions. And I do agree, a bill's a bill, and if the bill comes in, it's got to get paid. There's no question about us not, fulfilling our obligations. But I also understand and I'm aware of the fact that on both sides, on the town side and on the school side, we try to manage to our budgets, and historically, we have had surpluses on both sides of the aisle. And so even if we, manage to our expectations, there could still be a surplus at the end of the year. Are there surpluses pending this year? Are we on target for surpluses this year?
Yes.
Right. So I'm not going to diminish that it's only $58,000. $58,000 is $58,000. If we are to increase our budget by $58,000, then I would prefer to keep it on the town side in our contingency account. That way it's in our contingency. We can update one line item for our contingency. And if that money is in fact necessary, we can shift it from the contingency to pay that bill. Because, there are moving parts. There are moving parts on both sides, and we are trying to be fair. But at the end of the day, I'm reluctant to increase the budget. But this is a $58,000 bill that's got to get paid one way or the other. I would prefer that we keep it on the town side. I'm okay if we have to increase the budget, but I would prefer that we keep it on the town side in the contingency item. And if we need to switch it over, we can switch it over. That way the bill will get paid. It's not an issue of not fulfilling our obligations. We're not going to penalize the school system if they come asking us for the $58,000. We'll gladly give it to you. But I think at this point, I would like to keep it on the contingency side of the town budget.
Mr. President.
Sure.
If in fact that makes you more comfortable and you would vote for it in that, the seconder will agree, I will definitely amend my motion to keep it on the town side of the budget. Will you agree? Councilman,
Yeah.
Councilwoman Abbott, you were the seconder.
Oh, yes.
So I just have a question, Mr. Rayner, if we do identify this $58,000 and put it somewhere as an item in the town budget, does that give you more flexibility in paying these bills that when they come due?
Yes, I mean, I think the idea of putting it in the budget, holding it until this time next year, we'll have a good idea of where we're coming. If the school is on glide slope to get a deficit, then obviously it would be turned over to them. If not, it'll sit in the contingency. We don't know what we don't know. I mean,
Right.
year over year, generally, both sides of the street come in with surpluses. We do this by managing the budget, both sides, and taking a very close look at where we stand midway around the holiday timeframe, and then we start freezing discretionary spending to ensure that we don't go into a deficit. I mean, it's just the way budgeting works.
So we have a motion and a second to increase the budget by $58,000. And the 58 would go on the town contingency side, go into our contingency line. That.
Yes.
That is the motion.
I just don't have the page.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's all the way at the bottom, but I still am concerned. I know the bill for that is gonna wax us for $126,000 is still being held for further study. But there's still, this is the hardest part about us doing a budget is the state doesn't finish their budget till sometimes June 30th, and we've already passed ours. If they came in and socked us at $126,000, when we have our meeting, we have to do a lot of adjustments because we go over the cap in terms of expenditure, in terms of revenue and expenditures.
So
So
the same token, the school department sent its stuff over to the town side. And now, you know, we have changed, or they have gotten new information. It's kind of the same relationship in a way.
it is, but I am confident that there's enough money in the school budget to cover the
I
$58,000.
know that, and I don't agree with you. Well, people always say, oh, you can, you know, you could take, I remember the judge in the case where we sued over the Carrillo bill. And he was saying, oh, you know, I don't believe you if you say, well, there were choices made. And those are difficult choices made. And you don't have to make a choice when somebody hands you a bill. Okay, so if in fact they don't have that money, there is something over here. And I will tell you that I think the people in the town of Portsmouth who pay a great deal in taxes have a right to expect that our school will be supported to the best of our ability. Okay? And I will tell you just one quick story, if you'll excuse me. At Portsmouth Town Democratic meeting, we had 3 young kids from one from that graduated last year at Worcester Polytechnic. The other 2 young ladies were going to Boston College. All right. When I was there, we were happy to get into reject. Okay. So, and most of you probably don't even remember what reject is, but I do proudly. But anyways, Rhode Island Junior College, now Community College of Rhode Island. But, you know, that's pretty impressive. Those are 2 top flight schools. So again, I think that people in this town anticipate we'll have a top flight school system. And I think we need to make sure we try to support it to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Mr. Levesque. So we do have a motion and a second. Any further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay,
Nay.
Motion passes 4-2.
All right, that was the easy motion. The second motion I would like to make, and this, again, I contacted the chief of police and asked him about the wildlife. Let me just make sure I got the wildlife rehabilitation civic support item that was in for $4,188.80. And the chief advised me that, in fact, outside of the normal sphere of animal control activity, they were called on many occasions to assist citizens of the town or the police, the animal control officer, in, if you will, more exotic animals that were injured. And again, this is kind of just a sentiment of mine. But for a wealthy community like the town of Portsmouth to take an advantage of something, to use it, and then not be there when the bill comes due, when it's time to pay it, seems to me to be bad manners. All right. When I was a kid, some friends of mine used to play what they called chewing screws, which is run out the door after you'd had a meal. And I thought it was the stupidest and meanest thing in the world. If you sit down and you order something and you take it, you pay for it. So again, I would suggest, I would ask that, make a motion that the wildlife rehabilitation under civic support be approved for the amount of $4,188.80 as they requested.
I'll second that.
which is therefore an increase of $3,108.
What's that?
It would be an increase, it would
They
be-
already have 1,000,
Oh,
so you're asking to increase.
I thought we zeroed them out. I thought Mr. Gleason's motion.
No,
No,
they have $1,000 in the line item.
We took money from them and gave it to St. John's Lodge.
okay. I
Some-
thought it was all of
No,
it.
That was me. Was I
Oh.
decided that I'd rather feed people than take care of dead animals.
That's how cruel and
It does.
mean you are.
I am.
But I don't know if it's necessarily, those are the two things at odds here. I don't know that necessarily feeding people means you can't take care of wild animals, nor taking care of wild animals means you cannot feed people.
So you're actually requesting to add $3,189.
I am, sir. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of the additional $3,189 for the civic support request? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So it's 3-3. So that motion does not pass at this time. Next,
Mr. President.
Yeah.
I am going to ask. I'm going to skip the one for the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission, although I do think that Mr. Hamilton has addressed us very well on a lot of the energy issues facing the town. Ms. Abbott on the transportation issues facing the town, Mr. Gleason also. Long-term, short-term rental housing has also been Dr. Ryan's concerns and brought to us. And I think those are island-wide concerns, and therefore we somehow need to deal with them. But it seems at this point that at least internally in the town hall, the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission may not be the vehicle. So finally, I would like to ask that we increase, and by the way, this is well within probably available contingency funds, but it's more or less a principle. $2,500 in the budget towards or earmarked towards the town council having a breakfast with fellow wizards from Middletown and Newport, the other town councils, and the Navy. Towards and I of just having some colloquy, some sort of face-to-face so we know who each other is. I noted there was a person from Middletown who was kind enough to come out here, and I will acknowledge I did not know. I believe Mr. Gleason and Miss Abbott both went into Middletown. I do not know if the people there know you. And it is kind of funny because we're all of like 8 miles apart, but we did not know any of our colleagues on the island. So it seems to me that if we wanted to host a meeting at Green Valley or something, that this would be more than enough to cover. And we could at least sit down, and whether anything came of it, I do not know. Whether I will be even there for it, because it will be January after the new council is sworn in, and God only knows what's going to happen in the election. But I move that we put in $2,500 in a contingency fund in order to have a breakfast with the the entire 4 island governments, including the Navy.
Mr. Levesque, I think that's a great idea, and it is something that is probably needed. But you kind of said it in your speech, but that's something we could take out of our contingency. We have a $15,000 contingency. Well,
500 underneath the town council, excuse me, 500 underneath the town council budget, but it is also the other contingency, which is now $73,000.
right. So, I mean, I think,
Whoa, we're getting dinner.
but I think, I mean, this is kind of something that would probably take a lot of planning and coordination with the other towns to confirm something, but I think it's a good idea. I would just like to kind of hold the line on the budget, but use that as our placeholder in our contingency account to do that once we finalize what those costs would be.
Mr. President, I appreciate the courtesy of your comments. I was not unaware of the fact that there was a deathbed silence after I made my motion. And discretion being the better part of valor, in which the better part I saved my life, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Levesque. All right.
Can I please ask that the finance director now let us know exactly what the new budget total in revenue and expenditures is with the $58,000 addition? So that, because that changes the bottom line of the total budget.
Sure. So total revenues would be $74,404,959. Expenditures will also be $74,404,959. And that does increase the levy to 3.761%.
Which gives us how much room to the cap? How much dollar wise, excuse me?
We're about 150,000.
Okay, so and if we lose the revenue, that's 126,000 theoretically from the state budget, and if they finagle other ways to take money from the town, we don't have much breathing room to be up against the cap. In fact, if they take the 126, that adjusts everything around, and we have to raise taxes higher to gather that, so that 126 is actually probably, we
It's
thought
true.
this
I mean, this is gonna-
155.
I'm lobbying hard against it. This will be brought up at the Rhode Island Executive Board meeting tomorrow, which I'm part of. I also have a meeting with Representative Slater at the State House tomorrow to also plead our case. We'll see what happens.
I would ask you also plead your case to make sure that they put an escalator in the other taxes that they reimbursed us for, that we no longer get increases for.
Part of my argument against doing this.
Not
I feel like
gonna
Charlie
happen.
Brown and Hardball.
If you see Mr. Slater, tell him that Chuck Levesque told him to knock you off.
I will.
I knew his father. I served with his father.
I sir.
All right, so the revenue provisional
By the
approval.
way, is the motion appropriate then right now for?
Will you have to change your motion to reflect the new bottom line dollar figures of the
I would,
provisional budget?
With respect, Mr. President, so with respect to the addition of $58,000, we would request provisional approval of the general budget of $74,404,959.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1. Mr. Hamilton was opposed. That was on the revenue.
Can I ask one other?
That's the total budget.
Oh.
Revenues equal the expenditures.
Right, and that's including the 3,189.
No, the 3,189 was a no vote.
Was a fail.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no, it's just the 58 was added. I'm sorry. So that was total budget 74,404,959.
And Mr. President, declaring the vote, it was 5-1.
Yes, Mr.
Okay,
Hamilton.
Mr. Gleason voting against, or Mr. Hamilton?
Mr. Hamilton.
I voted against,
Okay.
but I could try the parlor trick and say I'd like to be recorded in the affirmative, just in case I want to bring the budget back again, which I will in January 25th or June 25th,
No objection.
whatever.
I'm in the
day that-
affirmative, so I can bring it back.
And I voted in the affirmative because I might want to bring it back.
We're going to move on to new business.
That's a great idea.
New business number 1. If anybody would like to leave at this point, feel free. But first item is, no, counselors are not, counselors will remain. It's requested the council approve Nick Aaron of Dive Services Unlimited LLC to be added to the approved mooring vendor list. Colonel Peters, Chief Peters.
Mr. President, members of the council, as in the letter stated, requesting to your approval of Nick Karen of Dive Services Unlimited to be added to the mooring list as a vendor. This was vetted through the Harbor Commission as well as the Harbor Master.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is Economic Development Committee report. Mr. Forgione. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Joe Forgione, and I will keep it to 5 minutes, I promise. I produced a one pager, so if you would, if you reserve your questions to the end, would probably keep it to the time. But what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the membership, the mission, and highlight a couple of initiatives, which will give you an idea of the things that we can do working for you. So you know all the members because you appoint them, but you see there on the left, I'm the chair. Tim Grissett for this year is the vice chair. He's here tonight. Ted Dietz is secretary, and the members that are listed there. But more importantly, look at some of the backgrounds. We have people who are computer scientists, former CFOs, wealth managers, land attorney, architects. It's pretty, we should feel proud as a town that we could get people like this to dedicate their time.
Mr. Forgione, hold on one second.
So
Do we, because I
I'm
realized
sorry.
that the member, are we going to pull up the list?
that's why I submitted it.
The backup?
Sorry.
No, just because you were referencing it and
Yeah.
looking. I'm
Oh,
like,
no,
"It's not
I
there."
thought you had it. I thought it was up there.
Nope. Just
You have
so
it?
everybody that's keeping score can,
And this doesn't count towards my time.
no.
I like one page.
In soccer, you're in running time.
I learned in talking to boards in the corporate sector, simplified to one page. Okay, we have it. Okay, it was attached to the agenda on the electronic version of the agenda that you sent out.
There it is.
Here we go. Okay,
There we go.
there you go.
Thank you.
Hopefully you can see it now. So those are the people, there's their background. Sorry. It's up on here. Oh, you're doing the Zoom. so- Absolutely. Okay, good to go. All right. So you see who the individuals are and what I'd like to do is keep people focused. And this is where you come in because when I go through the initiatives, I want to get feedback to make sure we're focused on the right things for the town. That's where Len helps us out as our liaison. We're plugged in daily with Rich Slipsky, who's a member of the group. So, as a group, we want to focus on our mission. So moving to the mission, I won't read that. You see, there's a few key words, which is data-driven economic analysis. That's what we're all about, right? We rewrote this recently to get the group focused on things which we can do well and contribute to the town. And this is where I ask something of the town council. If there's ever something that's being considered that requires data-driven economic analysis, you look at the backgrounds of the people, there's not a better group. So you just have to ask us to get involved. And I can tell you, it's free. We don't charge. So please do get us involved in various initiatives where we can add value to the town. Moving to some of the past initiatives, I want to talk about just a couple to give you an idea of the things that we can do and do more of if you get us involved. The Newport Polo contract, which is one which was done a couple of years ago. I was a member, not under my chairmanship, was under when Steve Johnson was chairman. But what we did is we got involved early in negotiating sort of the terms of the contract with the Newport Polo owner and structured what I call a win-win situation. I believe any good contract, I've done hundreds in the private sector, win-win has to be the basis of the contract, because if anybody leaves the table and the contract gets signed and they don't believe they got a good deal, it's going to fail, guaranteed. So we structured a win-win deal. And then the second part of that is teamwork. I met with Rich Rayner and we briefed him and he said, we'll take it from here. And he took the ball and structured the contract and moved it over the goal line. And so we worked really well. Rich Tulipsky was involved in that. So the committee working with town administration, teamwork, win-win scenario. And the results, it's not just my opinion that it's win-win. If you look at the numbers, I got the numbers from finance. Fiscal year 2019, that was the old contract. We were generating around 17,785 per year. That was before COVID. So I don't even show 20 and 21 and 22 because it went way down. And that was one of the concerns of the Newport Polo owner. So we structured the contract where it was based upon revenue tickets that he generated so that the town wins, he wins, we're in it together. And the results of FY 2023 were the last numbers I got. It was 39,537, so over 2x. And Rich Tulipsky can vouch for the fact that the initial models of the spreadsheets that we produced when we were talking with Newport Polo were just about that. So it kind of worked out. And it's the type of thing that we can do with, other contracts if you get us involved. I won't talk about some of the other initiatives because I'm running out of time. But if you ask questions about them, I can tell you. Current ongoing initiative they're working on that I do want to talk about is the Buy Local campaign that Rich Tulipsky is running. If you recall, the town received ARPA funds, right? And you allocated, thank you, some of the funding to put this together. It's been called various things, Buy Local, by various numbers. But what it is it's to create a platform so that the businesses within Portsmouth can collaborate and can generate more visibility and more business and more revenue. And therefore, they will want to come to Portsmouth. And I jokingly say, we may not be able to provide town sewage to every business in Portsmouth, but we can provide a 21st century technology platform. It's a lot of hard work. Thanks to Rich, we have one person and we have a few people on the BEDC and PBA that are working on it part-time, but it's moving forward. It's in pilot. The website is up and running, being tested by a few people. And hopefully later this year, we'll be rolling it out and we'll have more visibility. And I think the businesses, the PBA people on the committee are looking at it as a big win for them. And hopefully it will help us attract more people to Portsmouth. Some of the other investigations that we're working on, I wasn't going to highlight about it, but we were asked by somebody, I think it was Len, to look at Stonebridge to see if we could look at it from an economic development perspective. I know the town has looked at it from various lenses. We looked at it and concluded recently, Emil Sapolo put together a study and concluded there really is no economic benefit. We can't turn it into a revenue generating opportunity. However, it might still be an opportunity for parks and recreation. I have a question mark next to it because I believe that, if they pick it up and think about turning it into something, it's not going to be our initiative. And finally, we are taking a fresh look proactively at the Coggeshall School to repurpose it. I know, and I've read maybe 100 pages that 5 years ago, people looked at it and we know we have mold remediation and we know we have fire code issues and all kinds of things. But I believe that it's a missed opportunity that we could turn it into something. And I don't know if you saw that just a couple of weeks ago, the state issued about $28 million worth of grants for community learning centers to various communities around Rhode Island. And I looked at it and said, that could be potentially the Coggeshall School. So I'm not asking for anything now. If and when we do our economic data-driven analysis and we have something substantial, we'll work with Len and Kevin, you're our liaison too, and we'll put something in front of you. So those are some of the things. The last things, the other is housekeeping things. Get our website up to date, create a handbook so that people know how to do business in Portsmouth a little bit better. So a lot of things that we're doing, and that tried to keep it to 5 or 6 minutes and open it up to any questions you have about any of the items I talked about or anything else that I didn't talk about.
Yeah, a couple things. I was very interested. So you're suggesting Stonebridge probably would be best over the Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
You're looking at repurposing the Cow Show School. Just throw out an idea. I know that the East Bay Collaborative uses a building way up on in Warren.
Yeah.
And I always thought that it would be nice. They used to actually be housed to an extent in the Portsmouth Library.
Yep.
And it's a school. It might be a facility for that, but.
Yeah.
But I was really interested in the standing committee handbook. I
Yeah.
mean, if you could produce something that was easily accessible by all the committees that we set up, for them to do the work of, getting all their stuff in order, I think that would ease everybody.
Yeah, that's the vision. And Ted Peets, who some of you know, he's not here tonight, but he's leading that initiative and he's very ambitious about, using technology. So when we say handbook, we're moving, we've been an advocate of IT infrastructure and thanks for getting all the budget in. So we're thinking that it would more be a virtual site, which is a handbook where people would be able to go through it and electronically, but you can also.
You know how I learn about everything now? I learn how to do doctor's work. YouTube.
Yeah.
You can do an operation and land open an AK-47. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other comments or questions?
Thanks, Mr. Forgione, for bringing the presentation to us tonight. Last year during the budget cycle, I tried to find some ways to bring in money other than residential sources. We just don't have the industry in town, as you know. Are there any specific areas that you think that are open to expansion? Should we be banging on doors through Mr. Talipsky and your committee to try and bring in more boating, to bring in more, places that have music events? I don't know. I mean, any thoughts of your committee on what we can improve
Yeah,
on in that
absolutely.
respect?
We do have an initiative which is called Attracting New Businesses. I didn't put it on here yet because it's really just getting started. We have a subcommittee that's working on coming up with ideas of how can we attract what we call community-friendly types of businesses to Portsmouth. There's obviously a lot of obstacles in doing that. One I mentioned a little bit. I know I didn't want to bring up a sore subject about sewerage, but that kind of limits the type of businesses you can bring. But there's a lot of businesses. I used a couple of examples of the types of businesses that would be great for Portsmouth. Craig Clark's Ocean State Air, perfect kind of business. It's the type of business that's just going to grow and type of business we want in our community. Home Health Smith, you familiar with that? The Bombacks have Home Health Smith, which is basically sort of a healthcare where they provide equipment for elderly people in their house, like elevators and lifts and all that kind of thing. They have a facility. So one of the things that we're looking at is, can we identify a profile of the type of business, and then what kind of marketing programs do we need in order to attract those businesses to Portsmouth? So there's two things that we focus on is how can we use our existing town resources that make it a better place. That's why Caugascog. If we had a community center for meetings and about the Broadway Newport Innovation Hub down on Broadway, probably don't need another one on the island, but I think we could do a lot better than that here if we had a facility where we could do that, where we could attract students from Brown or Roger Williams if they want to bootstrap a business. And I have some experience in having done that before up in Massachusetts, so we could turn that into a multi-use facility, meeting facility, innovation hub, community event center, whatever. So we look at it, how can we use resources that we already have more effectively to attract businesses, and how can we attract new businesses that we want here in Portsmouth? And I know some people say, can you define what's a community-friendly, forward-thinking business? I think we will know when we see it, and we will know when it isn't, and That's the type of thing. So, yeah, we're looking at that as well.
Thank you.
Long-winded answer, but
Good answer.
anything else that we should be involved in?
Actually, I just got one question of a personal. Any idea what's coming in at the top of Chase Road and Park Avenue?
I asked Leah and she told me she didn't know.
Nobody
She
knows.
would know.
Yeah, okay.
Just some land clearing. Um,
I hope it's a community-friendly visit. Somebody asked me when we were producing this, could you define a not community-friendly bit? And I said, yeah, like a scrapyard, would we like that, you know? Or
Actually, somebody who I think is kind of knowledgeable suggests it might be for storing boats.
that's probably, it depends.
It-
I don't know.
if it's commercial,
It
light
depends.
industrial, they can pretty much do
Yeah.
what
Whatever you want.
allows.
Yeah.
Well, what the zoning.
You can't do
will-
a
Yeah,
lot.
it has to adhere to the zoning.
I don't think you get a septic system in there, so.
Right.
it has
There's,
to be
They're perking
something
it.
along that kind of a
Yeah,
lineage.
right.
It looks like they're perking it now for septic, so.
Good
Any
luck.
question, Mr. President?
no, I just wanted to say thank you for
Okay.
the presentation. But I'd like to stress the win-win scenario, helping us improve upon, the contracts negotiations. Those are the things where the additional resources, the additional expertise, improve upon what we're doing, and there's always something, we can always do something better.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the collaboration is what I like, and the fact that, we're working together to try to improve our situation, improve our footprint, and, it may take a little time, but we're on the right path.
And
So,
thank you for having us here. I think it goes a long way. We've talked about the difficulty recruiting. Having this helps me recruit, because if one of the issues, as long as people believe that the work is being listened to, they'll work harder. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Motion to
Thank you.
receive and place on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Okay,
Mr. President, I move that 3 and 4 both be, they're both requests for advertisements, that they be approved for advertisement.
How many days, how many,
what, do-
June 10th?
June 10th.
So you could
For
put
June
that
10th.
for, thank you. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next, we have, it's a public hearing. This is the request from Matt Gray for approval for a variance to the sound limits set forth in the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 257 noise, for multiple events to allow for live amplified music to take place throughout the summer on the lawn at Ragged Island Brewing Company, 54 Bristol Ferry Road. The first event is Ragged Island Music Festival, to be held June 9th from 2 to 8:30. There'll also be live music on Wednesday evenings from July 3rd through August 28th, from 6 to 8:30 PM. So this is a public hearing. Mr. Gray, do you want to speak? You say anything? No?
Just-
Any questions, comments?
Is this
This is a public hearing.
appropriate for, this is a hearing, right? So we
Yeah.
can vote on.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have to have the public hearing.
Just,
Yeah.
just to clarify though, Mr. President, I think you said 2:30 to 8:30, and it says 3 to 9 on here, I believe.
Where does it?
It's 3 to 9 instead of 8:30 to 2:30 to 8:30 on the zoning board approval.
I'm going by all right, so I was going by what was on our agenda.
June 9th was
Raise
limited
that
from
as
3 to
an issue.
9,
So,
and the Wednesdays are 5:30 to 8:30, so. Not that I think Mr. Gray would
well,
start things at 2:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, but hey, it's
No.
summertime.
I'm just
Mr.
going by
President,
what was on the
if I
agenda.
might,
I'm going by the zoning board
Yeah,
decision.
I have that
Right.
too.
Well, I don't want to leave Mr. Greaves hanging there, but I do have kind of an issue, and that's what I started talking about earlier. It occurs to me that the zoning board decision, which read very comprehensive, but it had conditions that I thought were much more appropriate for us granting licenses as opposed to a land use change. And I am kind of wondering, because it would seem to me that when we grant this type of license, we should put on controls that are very similar to what the zoning board suggested
Mhm.
in its decision. But again, I don't know if they are, in my mind, necessarily the appropriate thing for a zoning decision as opposed to this council making a decision for an entertainment license. So, I mean, I think at this point, what I would just like to do is incorporate by reference the conditions that the zoning board placed on the June 9th meeting, which I think you indicated, Mr. Hamilton, was 3 to 9 PM.
Yeah,
The concert series on June 9th is 3 to 9. The Wednesday
Yeah.
night series is 5:30 to 8:30.
Right. So those are, but that's a condition of the zoning grant. And I don't think it's that different from the advertised request, so I think we could put those as conditions of the entertainment license. And that's my suggestion, that the motion for the entertainment license incorporate the June 9th zoning board conditions and the Wednesday night music event conditions. Also, I believe there was a requirement of 2 parking attendants at the site, clearly indicated as event staff.
No less than 3 on the music festival and
Right.
one
Okay.
event manager on the Wednesday nights.
So I guess it would be one. The conditions that were imposed by the zoning board, right after, on general event conditions, right after the board voted unanimously. Those are the conditions right through number 4.
Mhm.
And I would move that be a part of the grant of the entertainment license for this matter.
well, we've already approved the entertainment license. This is the noise variance.
This
That's,
is the special use permit for these
No.
specific dates.
But
We're working
no.
on a noise variance.
yeah, we're working on the noise variance.
Okay.
So that's, they have a special, because of their operation, they have a special use permit through the zoning board. And so they had to get that approval first. So the zoning board is really the governing body for the special use permit. They imposed these conditions for the health, safety, and welfare of the
Oh.
community. They're before us specifically for the noise variance because of the amplified music. Now, I do agree that these are all very good conditions that, don't typically get applied to other petitions because sometimes they're a matter of right. And so this, I think in this situation, they had to go before the zoning board, got their approval. So tonight it's strictly noise variance, and these conditions would be mandated regardless if we.
Okay. So then I guess we're just in a position to move its approval
After some public
after
comments.
some public comment.
Or you
So
could
I
deny
didn't
it.
mean to leave you
Or-
hanging there, Mr. Green.
Mr. Grebe.
Tom Grave, 110 Third Drive. I have a suggestion as to how you handle this. Last year, there were some complaints and problems, and I think Mr. Gray has made a real effort to try and correct those. However, we don't know whether this is going to work or not. My suggestion is, one, that you put an actual dB limit on the variance, so that it's not just however much noise you want to make. And two, that you grant the variance for the music festival, which is the first one. The next one is about a month later, so that you have empirical data to work from. And for the next set of music festivals or music events, whether what is in place is going to work. So I would suggest that you tonight give the variance with a specific decibel limit, and then readdress it after seeing how well that works for the next series of concerts, which is, I guess, 2 months long, 3 months long. No, 2. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. President. Very reasonable request, I think, in many respects, but I will tell you, having done a little bit of work with people trying to set up ongoing music events, People are making their calendars up as we speak. Anybody who has any sort of following. So that if you don't lock them in at a certain point, we used to end up with Jesuit 3. Do you remember Jesuit 3? Anyway, they were a local group, but if you want to really lock in some people for the events, I think you need to give them the permission now. There is nothing, however, that suggests if they run afoul of something, it can be brought back and we can address it then. If they in fact don't seem to be operating within the parameters we thought.
But that puts it in a whole different arena of violations and so forth. I don't want to get into that. What I'd like to do is have them show that they can do what they say they're going to do, and then approve the next one. And quite frankly, we're only telling them now, not that they can't have the music festival, how loud it can be. And you're going to hear from the local residents, whether it's annoying, you're going to hear whether the traffic is controlled properly and so forth. And those sorts of things you can then modify at the next hearing. If you were to do this serially rather than all at once, not knowing what the results are actually going to be. Here you actually have a chance to know exactly what you're going to get. And if it's not what is wanted, you get a chance to change it. Not that you're going to say you can't have a music festival. Thank you.
I would, and any further comments? Are there any abutters here that want to speak? I'm just going by, this was a special use permit, not having been present at the meeting, but I do know that the zoning board does take into consideration when granting a special use, noise, even though they can't grant a noise variance. I'm sure noise was probably discussed at the zoning board. I read from the decision of the zoning board that there were numerous direct abutters that were there in support of the proposed events. So I would think if there was some concerns from abutters, that tonight would have been their opportunity to come before the council to specifically let us know what their concerns were. And not that Mr. Grieve doesn't bring up some valid points. I attended some of the functions last summer, and I thought they were very well run. I felt Mr. Gray was doing a great job of monitoring the situation. These events do not run all that late into the evening, and I'm not going to diminish, 8:30 or 9 o'clock is still late for some folks. But I felt that, at least when I was there last year, that it was very well run. And I think that as a business owner, Mr. Gray is going to try to keep things under control in order to continue to operate this type of function. Because if it's a problem, then it won't be allowed to continue. So I would like to give Mr. Gray the benefit of the doubt here that if we approve this with the conditions and with some of the concerns about noise, that he would continue to monitor and keep things under control. I think last year there was some issues with parking and he addressed them very quickly. And we've got provisions in here now for parking and, police details. So I think that the town and at least police and fire are satisfied. So I mean, that's what I have to weigh in on it from council. Any further comments?
Well, the first thing I would say was I would make a motion to close the public hearing and then the council can
Second.
debate.
We could do that. It's part of the public hearing. I want it on record. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0 to close the public hearing.
I would just say that outside of running a very successful business in Ragged Island, Mr. Gray's other real job is running events around New England, where he does races and other events, including some in Newport. I haven't run in any, but I hear they run very well. My running days are over, but Portland, Maine, Stowe, Vermont. So it's not something he's doing as a side gig. It's something he does for a living.
Mr. President, I move we approve the request.
President, I'd like to
I'm
speak.
sorry.
Because I think when you, if it was Mr. Gray or it was Rhode Island Energy coming before us for a sound variance, our ordinance basically asks or spells out section 257-18B, any person seeking a sound variance under this section shall file an application with the council. Application shall contain information which demonstrates that bringing the source of sound or activity for which the sound variance is sought into compliance with the chapter would constitute an unreasonable hardship on the applicant, on the community, or on other persons. I don't know if that's part of our application process, that he has to prove what the hardship would be if he was disallowed the sound variance. I just point that out, that that's in our ordinance. I don't think it's something we should focus on, but I like to just say that if we're approving a sound variance, I don't think we should approve it and say, okay, you now have a sound variance. Your guys can come in and turn your amps up to 11 and it's acceptable, because if you're approving a variance, then there are no stipulations on what your limits are. So basically in our ordinance, it says that, you know, noise is considered a nuisance. I think it's residential, correct me if I'm wrong, till 10 PM, the dB level is 65. And typical rock music is anywhere from 90 to 120. And anything above 85 is considered harmful to human beings. So should we be assigning a level? I mean, I like rock music. I bring my earplugs for that reason. I don't think it's going to be an issue here, but if it's centered in the middle of the property, I would think it would be practical to ask that it be monitored from the sidelines of the property, so that with a decibel reading meter, whether it's our Portsmouth Police that gets stuck with that, or I think you should invest in one personally, that would tell you what your ambient noise is, that you're projecting into the area. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. They're not that much money. And perhaps the limit should be 85 or 90 decibels. I don't think you're going to be there, but I think just given a variance carte blanche is not the way to approach this. And I think the council should consider that would be one of the restrictions that we impose, what the noise level would be.
Mr. President, I think Mr. Gleason has pointed out perhaps some deficits in our noise ordinance. I do not believe that a merchant or business person here in town should suffer because we have not been perhaps as thorough as we should have been, as Mr. Gleason has pointed out, in regards to it. I think that we can go on the track record of a Portsmouth resident business owner that has a very good record, to the best of my knowledge, is running a very successful business, to the best of my knowledge, and that he is going to do everything to make sure that the reputation of that business is maintained. So therefore, while the points are very legitimate, I would suggest that we move ahead with this, and perhaps Mr. Gleason can bring back the noise ordinance for future study.
Okay. May I just comment?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with your points. I am trying to do some work on ordinances that have to do with our other areas of town, and this is one that I'm not ready to tackle at this point. I don't know how old this is. I don't think it's that old. So I would make a motion that we limit the decibel level to 90 dB. Somebody wants to second that and approve that as part of the restrictions, that's fine.
Did you describe as 90 pain?
90 decibels is a tractor or a subway. A power saw, which I would assume would be a chainsaw, is 110. A rock concert and the front row is 140. A disco is 120. Or a
Sorry, I
shotgun.
never went to a disco. I'm not prepared to go along with that. Well, there's not been seconded.
Or a power mower is 110. So if you're mowing your lawn, your neighbor's hearing 100, or you're hearing 110. I think the big difference here for me personally, and I understand the rock concert and the ringing in the ears, is that this is outdoors, so the noise dissipates a lot more than if it's contained. I think we can give it a year and see how it works. As Mr. Aguirre pointed out, the abutters don't have a problem.
No, the abutters spoke at the meeting and they seem to be looking forward to the concert season. My only concern is that if somebody does have an issue, that with the sound variance as approved with no limits to it, they really have no complaint.
Well, it's a sound variance for specific dates, so it's not a carte blanche. You can't just on a whim on a Monday night, just say, I'm gonna
No.
crank up the
No,
music
I
to
agree with
110, but I do
Unless-
appreciate your concerns.
Unless Hendrix shows up. Then we're gonna rock.
We'd have. to
Then we'd have a
approve
problem.
it.
We'll all go.
Be coming back from the dead.
All right, so let's try to circle back. So Ms. Gleason had a motion. There were no seconds. Was there an initial? motion?
He got interrupted before he could get any seconds
So,
then
I'm
for
gonna-
discussion.
Okay, I do not believe I heard a second to your motion, Mr. Gleason. So I'm gonna move that the request for the variance be approved as requested.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1. Counts. 5-1. Okay. Okay, the next item, new business number 6. It's a request to waive and or reimburse 4 Hearts for any fees paid to the town for construction permits for the Turnpike Ave Playground. Mr. Levesque.
Mr. President, the Four Hearts Group came before the council 3 weeks ago and asked for the ability to have a different sign than traditionally permitted. I believe at that point, things got a little out of hand with different discussions. And there was a motion made to actually inquire a number of things, including that they pay a permit fee. Subsequent investigation indicates that they may not have paid any permit fees for any of it because they're a memorandum of agreement that we had with the town. In any event, I would just like to ask that we waive any permit fees for the organization, which in fact is a group of people who are working with the town and have contributed a great deal of money on their own.
So you're asking to waive the permit fee or if they, for the sign, basically.
Yeah.
I'll second it. I mean, God bless you.
Any further discussion?
Just one thing, no problem waiving the town permit fees, but there is a state ADA fee that they have to pay that the state cannot waive. It's $2 per thousand for the ADA fee. Just want to let you know.
Don, that
Per
thing.
thousand what?
2,000 square feet of
It's $1,000 per $1,000, whatever the limit is, whatever the cost of the project is, it's $2 per every $1,000. For the state permit.
Let's say the sign costs $1,000 today.
You gotta pay $2 to the state for the ADA fee.
Well, they can come and take it from my cold, dead hands.
Excuse me, do we know what the permit fees are? Do you by know, Leah? How much the sign permit fees are at this point?
I think I responded to this email. They have not paid any fees because playgrounds do not pay for building permit fees.
Okay. So it's a moot point,
They-
other than the state.
They do need.
Other than the sign.
The sign fee.
Which is paid to the state.
No.
No,
No.
it was my,
Last meeting, I don't mean to cut you off, Leah. Leah addressed a number of concerns regarding the sign, and it was agreed that they would pay by their own suggestion, the building permit fee for the sign. And so what I'm gathering from tonight is the motion that will waive that fee that they agreed to pay. And what Mr. Woodhead was stating was that they would still be obligated to pay the ADA fee to the state.
So my only question was, what would the town fee be? Less than $100 kind of thing?
I don't know what the cost is for the sign. I think I saw something estimated about $4,000.
So that's with the sign, not for the permit.
That's correct.
I think Mr. Gleason's question is what's the cost of their permit to put the sign in?
So the fee might be about $100.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to waive or reimburse the fees paid to the town for construction permits for Turnpike Playground. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Okay. All right, next we're going to, it's number 7, it's request proposals for analysis of current information with an idea to alleviating the inherent problems with East Main Road. Now, before we begin, this is East Main Road, potentially would involve RIDOT. So I am going to recuse myself. And therefore, with Mr. Castman not being here tonight, the mantle falls to the next senior member of the council, which would be Mr. Hamilton. So
Lucky me.
Mr. Hamilton, you get to run the show and I'll be outside the door.
It'll be done in 5 minutes. Or less,
Even quicker.
even quicker.
So
Mr. Levesque.
basically, actually, I think Ms. Abbott and Mr. Gleason both recall the Middletown meeting and quite frankly, the meetings we have here in which there is a lot of information on East Main Road, a lot of different ideas and theories, but nobody has really collected them with an eye towards whether or not there is a solution to the problem other than the one that has, or the two that have been suggested. One is bring it up to grade, which will not happen, or 2, repave, which will likely happen sometime in the future. I suggest to you that if they just repave, you can take a photograph and you can take soundings of every complaint we have about East Main Road and just turn them up to 11 because they will just keep going up. So the idea is that, and this is not an expenditure of money at this time, that we seek out somebody who will evaluate the available information and bring us back a idea of the options available to the town, in particular addressing the DOT, and that would include potentially the road diet, or it may be that they say, no, DOT is 100% right, you can't do that. Okay, but at least the next time we sit down with DOT, we can say, look, we have this information buttresses our argument, and we would like to have it considered. And so therefore, I would like just to have the council approve of a request for proposals for a group to, or an engineering firm essentially, to coalesce all the information and see if they could provide us with an additional solution to the problems that are facing this community and quite frankly, the island with East Main Road.
So if
Yeah.
I may, one, I don't think this is something we can take on ourselves with it not being our road. Two, the folks working on Rhode Island are doing exactly that. They have grant funding and are working with our town planners and all the communities on the island to look at, to kind of compile all the transportation studies that have already been done and come up with recommendations on how to improve our roads to make them more user-friendly for all modes of transportation, bikes, pedestrians, buses included. And there's been multiple studies and assessments that have provided recommendations for things to do with East Main Road. At the end of the day, if we can't get the Middletown Town Council, the Portsmouth Town Council, and RIDOT to all agree on a solution, nothing's ever going to happen. And as it stands, Middletown doesn't agree on a solution. We can't really support a solution because we waffle around on the language, and RIDOT's not going to do anything unless we're very firm on what we want. So I think this is East Main Road has always been my top priority. It is probably the only reason I ran for the town council. And I think I can quite safely say that we do not have what it takes to fix that road. So I think this would be a waste of our efforts.
Counselor, I appreciate that because I will tell you that when I was on this council in 1988, East Main Road was a problem. It was probably a problem. But what I don't agree with, quite frankly, is to say that we as a town council are unable to fix or unable to work towards a goal that we believe is a goal that the community should have. I listened to the people at Middletown, and at least 2 or 3 of them said, RIDOT says we can't do that, period. They had no interest in anything else. Okay, so it was kind of like RIDOT had boxed us in. They are road builders. They really had no interest. And there was no other plan that anybody could bring forward and say, look, we can do this. We have at least a year, I believe, before any paving takes place in Portsmouth. Because actually Middletown, they may do it this summer, may not, but that stretch of East Main Road in Middletown is not bad anyway. I mean, they won't even have to grind that as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, we have about a year. And I think it's a year that we must use to try to come up with a plan that is beneficial to the town of Portsmouth, even if we don't include the 2 miles basically of Middletown. And so, I've been in this state in some places where all of a sudden Warren comes into Bristol. 4 lanes come 2 lanes. It's not good, but it happened because people didn't agree.
So what you're asking exists. There's no effort that needs to be expended on this. I suggest you sit down with the folks at Rhode Island and they have all the data to support it and and maybe Leah would be happy to chip in on this. You could easily write a 2 to 3 page memorandum outlining safety improvements we could make on East Main Road if RIDOT were to approve them. And as a council, if we approve that and submit it to RIDOT, they will seriously consider it. But good luck to you in those efforts.
First, I'm gonna say, Counselor, I have taken my lead from you. And therefore, I'm going to take my lead from you on this and pull it. Because I do know that you have spent a great deal of effort in doing that. I am not going to give up on this. I mean, I know you're not. This is, energy on the island, traffic on the island. These are the things that are existential, quite frankly, in my mind, for this island, and we've got to address it somehow.
Well, we just spent some time talking about how to attract businesses. Well, if we want to attract business and improve quality of life for those of us living here, make our roads safer, add some sidewalks, and we're kind of in the right direction. Community center is also a great way to improve quality of life and attract business. All those things are things that successful and thriving communities do, that we somehow think are abnormal and can't get behind. So
Don't get cynical on.
I'm beyond that.
All right, so I'm withdrawing my request. I believe that.
Oh, not yet. Mr. Gleason wanted to say something on this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Mr. Gleason.
Just my comments on this thing. It's the only solutions to me, are the so-called road diet, widening the road, and a protected, and/or a protected bike lane on this, and some variations in between. And the road diet, is where the numbers are clashing, and people want to change the numbers. So I don't know if we're ever going to get there. The argument is when you have a road diet on East Main Road, then you're going to move your traffic over to West Main. So again, there is no easy solution that has been said. But to me, I've always thought that the way to start is with a resolution to the state, that's, the General Assembly, which people apparently think is a waste of paper. But I think together with Newport and Middletown, we could say to RIDOT through the State House that basically they're not listening to us. We know the road is substandard and needs to be wider. We would like a solution. In the case of Middletown, the stretch that they're starting with is like 1.5 miles, 1.3 miles. It's very small. This would be the target to to carve into Rhode Island boulevards and take 3 feet or 4 feet and widen it there. You know, I mean, and the houses in that general vicinity, you know, because the property is there.
I believe
But,
one of the ladies on the council is the owner of Rhode Island Boulevard in Middletown, but I'm not sure.
Maybe,
That used to be the case,
I don't
but
know.
I appreciate. your
But
comment.
anyways. My thoughts. Thank you.
I don't disagree that a resolution might be a good idea. I will be the cynic and say it won't go anywhere, but
To
I
start,
think
you know?
we have talked about a lot of different things. We know that the main issues are the condition of the road, the width of the road, the speed that people drive. And that the telephone poles are right there. So one of the requests that we could potentially make with a resolution would be to ask the General Assembly to approach RIDOT and National Grid to at least say, hey, can we at least move the poles back 5 feet? And that way trucks and buses aren't taking over 2 lanes because they're worried about taking off their side mirror. That could be a small compromise. They're not gonna they're not gonna spend $55 million to bury the
I want
cables.
to make 2 quick points. One is that when you improve the surface of the road, according to everybody I used to have come in and help me with traffic, all you do is speed it up. Okay, the second thing is, there is something on all roads they call the fog line. Now, on East Main Road, that is supposed to give you an idea that you're closing on the curb. On East Main Road, the fog line is the curb. Okay, I once had a police officer telling me, oh, he crossed the fog line. I said, he hit the curb then. All right, there is no such thing. So if you drive on East Main Road in Portsmouth and look at the destruction that widening that would be, it's not comprehensible. And I believe, Mr. Gleason, you're entirely correct. Rhode Island Nurseries has at least like a mile of that frontage that could accommodate. I mean, it's not my property, so, you know, it's their property. It could accommodate in the middle.
I believe it's a state
It's
property.
state property.
What's that?
The poles are far enough that I believe that is state property that could be expanded. It
In
just
Middletown.
have to be on the westerly side of East Main Road.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Sorry, I'm just gonna jump in on this widening topic. Senator DePalma spoke at the Middletown meeting as well. He discusses this topic with RIDOT regularly. It's something that is maybe on the radar and maybe will happen in 25 years. It's nothing that's gonna happen anytime soon. So, you know, I think we have 2 options for improving the safety of that road now, you know, for the rest of my youth, at least. And it's either do nothing, which doesn't improve the safety, or a road diet. I love the idea of a separated bike path. Doesn't address pedestrians, buses, school buses, delivery trucks, left-hand turners, or any of the above. So it doesn't really, it's a separate topic in my mind. It's not really an East Main Road topic. So if you wanted to if somebody wanted to write a resolution that we can get Middletown to support us on, requesting that RIDOT do a corridor study on East Main Road and look at the overall impacts of doing a road diet in specific locations where it is suitable, I would support that.
I will get back to you.
Excellent.
Good topic for conversation for your first breakfast meeting.
I was thinking, now, we could talk of this over eggs and legs. Uh-oh.
I predict a food.
So, all right, so there will be no motion on the item.
That's good.
So we will now move on, and I'll ask the president to come back and take the reins, thank God. And we'll go back to new business number 8, which is request approval for award of curbside collection contract for MTG Disposal LLC. Mr. Woodhead, with all your numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Council President, members of the council. I'd like to provide an overview of the comprehensive process that we undertook by our staff and the consultant regarding the curbside collection RFP. So on January 29, 2024, the town advertised for curbside collection, followed by a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting on February 9th. Question period ended on February 23rd, during which we received several questions and issued 3 addendums. The bidding period ended on March 28th, 2024. Upon review of the proposal by staff and our consultants, we invited the 2 lowest bidders, MTG Disposal and Waste Management of Rhode Island, to come in to review their proposals which included exceptions to the RFP in their submittals. Both companies demonstrated a strong level of preparedness and provided thorough explanations of their proposals. After careful consideration and a detailed discussion with our consultants, I would like to recommend MTG Disposal as a preferred bidder for the curbside collection project. Their proposal closely aligns with the town's requirements and exhibits a commitment to delivering high-quality service. Furthermore, we included estimate costs for curbside collection stickers, both with and without page or throwbacks. It's important to note that these figures are just preliminary and subject to further refinement before presentation to the council at a later date. The estimated annual cost with without the pay bag stands at $442 per year, while with the pay bags is approximately $367, representing a difference of about $75. So in conclusion, I would like to request the town council consider awarding the curbside collection contract to MTG Disposal LLC for the curbside collection.
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Woodhead. We have questions from counselors?
I have one, and we didn't discuss it when we put the RFP out, but the fact that we have to purchase all of these bins raises the price considerably. I would like to see if there's a way that the town could do it outside of putting it into the cost of the yearly service, which would take roughly, right, I missed it. Hang on a second. $63 per, right? No, carts. $130,000, $140,000 off of the top of the costs. Right?
It's
Give or
somewhat
take.
close, 61,916.80,
Right, and then some of the smaller ones.
then
people pay for those.
5,240, then same thing, double that again, right?
Yeah. So roughly 160, 130, $140,000 off the top. If there was a way we could fund that and lower the price of the cost, it would, I think, because if I'm at home right now and I call Waste Management, they're gonna charge me $379 for the year. Or $52, I think it's $53 a month. I looked it up the other day, and they're gonna bring the bins. But the fact is, we're gonna have bins that are gonna be Portsmouth bins. That way, if MTG is not living up to the standards, we can find another provider and we don't have to go out and get new bins.
Well, also too, after we amortize them over the 5 years, there are bins.
Right.
So the price will go down because now we won't be paying that 140,000.
Right, which is why I'm asking if we can do that $140,000 some way up front as a town, it would take the burden off of the residents to have to pay for that. It's my belief that we should be rolling this into the tax base overall at some point. So if this $140,000, and I'm just using that number, is the kickstart to get the cost into the tax base, I think it's worthwhile for us to figure out a way to do that. We have 12 months or 13. But we have to decide whether or not we want to go with MTG at this point in time. And then we can figure out the cost for the homeowner, which wouldn't be decided until,
Further down the road.
right, no, December, January, something like that.
So I have a question. If I like that idea. If we were to roll the cost of the bins into the budget, that doesn't change with awarding it now, right? We could award it now and then figure out where we want to pay things out of.
If we had a pot of money that was available to spend that $140,000, if come June 30th, we have a $600,000 surplus. We have 300, I'm just using round numbers here, we have 300 already allocated for payback of the 12-13 warrant to finally, hopefully kill that thing. Maybe we can use 140 to do that at that point in time.
Mr. Rayner, thoughts?
On the spot.
Well, first off,
I was in a different place. I was on a beach.
now, the bins, what's driving this process right now, whether we get the bins, whether we pay for the bins through the sticker price or we pay for the bins another way, the bins have to be ordered now. We're talking thousands of bins.
Right.
That don't exist until they make them. The second thing that we have to consider is that if you're going to put the bins in the tax base, you're now getting a tax subsidy to an enterprise fund, which is going to be problematic down the road. And I think you're going to get a lot of comments from your constituents. We can do anything you want. And then if we have to buy those bins now, we got to figure out where we're going to get that money from. We were discussing $58,000 earlier this evening. You know, we've got to figure out where that money is going to come from, and it can't be, let's see if we have a surplus. We've already obligated, you know, half of the surplus goes towards the 1213 warrant, and we have the difference in the two GASB reports, so we have to fund the difference in the ARC payment by June 30th. So we can make anything work. I would suggest that whether we pay for them through the enterprise fund, which seems to be the fairest, because not everybody wants to be part of this program. You have people that are going to want to stay in the transfer station, and they're going to say, well, where's my piece of the pie? Who's funding me? And I think it's, the council said we're going to operate two completely distinct enterprise funds. There are two different clubs. You can be a member of both. You can be a member of one or the other. It doesn't matter. But it becomes problematic if we're going to do this. It would require a vote, obviously, by the council if we're going to fund this with the taxpayers' money, with an eye towards we're going to, in future budgets, we're going to roll this into the tax base, which we know we can't do off the top right in one fell swoop because it would put us over the cap. Then we'll make that decision and we'll get marching down that path. But it is problematic from my perspective. That's all.
I agree with you. Excuse me, Mr. Larry. I agree with you, problematic, but my recollection of all those trash meetings at the high school, everybody who was there said, I don't care if it's cheaper, I'm staying with the transfer station. So they've already signed and sealed their fate, as far as I'm concerned. So if, you know, they can't come back and say, hey, I want a piece of the pie, why can't you buy my bins?
So two questions. One, the town owns the bins, right?
Yes,
Correct.
Okay, so it's an asset that the town would own the bin.
Technically, the enterprise fund owns the bins.
Okay,
Yes.
fair. But then also, you know, I've been on the council for over 5 years, and I think since I was first elected, we've been talking about how we should put trash collection back in the tax base. I think this is a good kickstart to go that direction, and we should figure out a plan to get it all.
Mr. President, if I could, usually if you're doing a startup, one of the things you do, and by the way, Mega had 1 million of these. Okay, they do.
but not that says the town of Portsmouth on the side.
No, I mean, but that's paint.
It's a hot stamp.
Yeah.
It's not paint, it's.
Yeah,
It's,
I'm not thinking, but anyway, you can amortize it over a number of years. Basically, you put it as a capital and you amortize it over 6 years while you're getting, if you will, some income in on the process. And you just roll it into whatever you can do. And these things are sturdy. So you might even be able to amortize it over 8, 10 years, as opposed to coming up upfront with the money, which would be a certain amount of a burden. So I mean, it seems to me that if we want to go ahead with this, I don't think the cash, and I agree with Mr. Hamilton looking to see if we can ameliorate the first sticker shock on it, but we can just amortize it over several years, and it would be then roughly 15% of the overall cost, or something in that nature, if we did it for a lengthy period of time.
I think we will find it will be next to impossible to amortize an asset like a trash bin for any longer than the 5 years that we have. They only have a service life of 10 years, maybe 15 years. Part of the contract is we get parts, replacement wheels, replacement lids. So I mean, maybe we'll find somebody that will be willing to do it, but I don't think we would be able to amortize it for that long.
We
And then
could
my
do
other
it for
question,
5 years, not for longer.
not for longer.
Okay.
I also, we would have to, once we sign the contract, we're committed to ordering the bins. That bill is going to come forward and before this next fiscal year ends, on a budget that you provisionally approved tonight. So we'll have to figure out where that money comes from.
Correct.
so if 4,000 people don't sign up, we don't have the money to pay for those bins.
As we outlined, we obviously studied this quite a bit. And we did outline in the beginning of this entire process 3 times now. That's our best guesstimate, but it's a risk. However, the cost is comparable. If you just look at the number of people that are buying stickers to the transfer station, we do have people who do both, that have a private contractor and they use the transfer station. But for argument's sake, there's about 2,000 households out of a little close to 7,000 eligible that buy transfer station stickers. What are those 5,000 households doing? And they're not all finding, bins at work or whatever. So there is a huge market here. You see it every December. As soon as we post the sticker price, you see full page ads in the paper announcing the teaser rates to get you to go to private curbside pickup. So we think we're in safe ground. While it is a risk, we think we're on safe ground with the number of people that will compare what the town cost is going to be with what they're already paying. And the reality is the teaser rate goes away after a year. Waste Management, Mega, they're in the $900 range per year right now. And they don't offer the services that we will be offering. They don't offer regular leaf yard waste. I couldn't think of it. Yard waste pickup. We will. So yes, there is a risk, but we think it's a calculated risk. We've studied this now for as long as Ms. Abbott's been on the council.
Long before that.
Yes.
No, about 6 months before that.
No, we've discussed this trash every year. Trash is 16 years I've been here, we've been.
I have a
talking trash.
question. The 442, is that for how long?
That's for a year. That'd be starting July, but that number is going to change up or down. I'm thinking it's going to change more downward because Rhode Island Resource Recovery does offer some incentives for grant money for recycle bins. So we would apply for all that stuff to see if we can get the prices down.
So we're estimating 442 for the first year. It might go down.
It might go down a little bit here and there, right?
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think that's comparable with the teaser rate that you get for the first year. And I talked to, several people that have it and they get the teaser rate for a year, and then people are paying anywhere from, $60 a month to $85 a month for their trash pickup. That would include recycling pickup every week.
Recycling and refuge every week, and then 22 weeks of yard waste collection.
Because Mega used to not collect recycling every week either. It was every other week. And I know that was a big, well, that's why I left them.
But remember though, that when you have a one-on-one relationship with Mega, they can jerk you around a lot.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. That's what I'm
And if
saying.
They have 4,000 customers answering to one person, which would be,
Right.
well, not Mr. Woodhead anymore, it'd be the recycling coordinator.
Which is why I'm agreeing with Mr. Rayner that I think we're providing better value for
and
the
plus-
cheapest price out that you can possibly get out
And
there.
then after year 2, our cost increase is only by the CPIU for sewer, waste, water and trash. So ours is tied to a CPI, you know what I mean? Other
Yeah.
than like they're saying, we're gonna give you a disposal fee, we're gonna charge you this, charge you that. So that ours is more confined to what they can increase.
And so
Right.
how would that fee change if we already own the bins?
It would go down. It depends how many people are on it, but then the price would go down after the 5th year.
So if we pay, I mean, obviously, if we, do you know what
It
would be the
it
delta?
It would be $405 instead of $442. It would go down about $40. And that's factoring in $145,000 cost for the bins and taking it off the top of the whole. So
Yeah,
that was just my rough math.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer.
So, Mr. President, if I might, a couple of quick things. One is that, the Facebook page I am frequently assaulted on, actually, but there is often a comment by somebody saying, hey, I just looked at my Mega or my whatever bill, and it just went up $60. I do not think we will be in the loss leader screwing around with people type of role that sometimes some waste haulers have done. So we will be consistent, and we will probably at a council meeting have to adjust the rate, and we will tell people why the rate is being adjusted. And quite frankly, we are doing something which I originally did not think would or could be done, which is that we are not creating a monopoly. We are allowing basically the market to decide. If the market decides that they're going to do this, then hopefully everybody in town will say, well, that makes sense. And maybe even some of the people who use the transfer station might decide. And they may everybody might be comfortable with it. And if it doesn't, you know, that's capitalism. You know, I mean, I don't think there's too much of a shirt we can lose on this. So I just suggest that we go ahead and do it. And I think that I hope and I believe, quite frankly, that the results will be salutary for most of the people in the town.
I move that we award the contract to MTG Disposal as suggested by Mr. Woodhead.
Second.
Any discussion, Mr. Gleason?
Just a couple comments. I know the bid prices included pickup services for the town proper, DPW, Sandy Point Beach and Glen Farm.
Yep.
Are those numbers separate from this bid package? Is the town paying
It's
for those numbers themselves and not
we are. So
included in the $420?
It's included in the RFP, but it is separate from curbside collection to people that are gonna pay for the enterprise fund. It's totally separate because right now we already pay for a bid through
Right.
another company. The same with recreation. So those numbers are just gonna keep moving forward with how we're doing
So you're gonna use the same vendor, but it's coming out of the town's pocket, not out of the individuals.
as we already are. Right
Yeah,
now.
okay. Also, just so it isn't a surprise later, but in the addendum number 3, one of the questions was answered about, you know, how are we gonna get 4,000 people? Is that we, the town, said the residents will have 2 options, the transfer station or the town's curbside, and the town will adopt an ordinance. Have we thought into the future about this whole ordinance thing? I mean, we should.
We have.
We've talked about it in previous meetings, but it's not going to allow people to get a vendor on their own, as I could understand it.
Correct. We're gonna be coming back in front of you in probably a couple more months with, we'll be working with the solicitor to come up with an ordinance to outline how we're gonna have the ordinance for a single hauler for the town of Portsmouth.
Just to add on to that, that would not apply to resident units with 5 residents and above and commercial. They would still be able to operate the same way they are now.
Same with condominiums and trailer parks, that they're not included in it.
Thank you.
Just one last thing. Actually, I believe at the suggestion of Councilwoman Abbott, I am now a member of Black Earth. That does
Composting pickup.
they do actual composting though, I mean, food
Yes.
stuff and everything like that. Perhaps some point we can, that's not in here, is that correct? Okay, so maybe sometime, I do not wish to add a burden to you, but I'm not gonna worry about it either. But if you could take a look at that, they actually sent us a correspondence at one point
They did.
about their, and I put my bin out today as a matter of fact. And they come by and they don't bother me and they take my stuff, so why not?
I think it would be a great idea to, if we're sending out any mail with sign up information for
Absolutely.
the curbside pickup, to include information on compost pickup if anybody's interested. It makes my big trash bin a little useless, but it's okay.
Or we could support our own compost bins in our own yards, you know, as our.
That works for some
Recycle
people, it
rate.
doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you can put meat and bones in their
We're getting.
compost pickup without having a problem, but anyway,
I tried
that's the
it.
side.
Need a big yard and very understanding neighbors, so.
I will also, just because it came up, you know, one of the big reasons to do this is to limit the truck traffic on our residential roads to 1 per week. And so the ordinance is pretty critical to achieving that goal.
Okay, I do want to just close with a couple remarks before we vote. I mean, this was a long process. Mr. Woodhead, thank you for pulling this off. But I think we've stayed to the mission, which we've been saying for the longest time, is we needed to get better information. We needed to to be able to organize our position with the RFP, get the costs. It's still similar to the transfer station. We have to, there's a little risk here in estimating the number of households, but we have a range that we, just like with the transfer station, we know about what that sticker cost is going to be. To the folks that I've talked to that have different vendors, I think these numbers are still significantly below what some residents are currently paying. I don't know because I don't have curbside, but these numbers bear it out that the cost to consolidate does provide value to the residents as well as the safety. So, I think everything that we've been saying, we've kind of stuck to that course. We finally got to the process where we were able to get good competitive bids. And, I'm happy with the results. So thank you, Mr. Woodhead.
I just want to thank everybody. This was just on Mr. Woodhead. This was like a team effort. Everyone who helped out in the staff. You had everybody helping. Tax collector, Rich Talipsky, Barbara Repa, Paul Rodricks. We had everybody on this, even our consultants. So this was like a team effort.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know it was a headache, and thank you very much.
The finance director too. I don't want to
All
leave
of
out the
you.
finance director.
All of
Finance director.
We still got some work to
the
do.
Town administrator too.
There's probably some comments that I want to just take before we vote. Mr. Roberts.
Peter Roberts, 80 Armont Avenue. I brought this up before at meetings about the transfer station. The idea of the transfer station, why I do it, when my can fills in the house, it goes to the transfer station. Anybody that has curbside, it's going to sit there for a week. Like Dr. Ryan brought up one time. He doesn't want to put it in his car, it stinks. If you take it from the can in the house, it doesn't stink and you get rid of it. And you can take everything else there when you want to. And you don't have cans sitting in the street that blocks traffic going up and down. And there are so many different things that happen with this, that it's a mess to the community. If you got the transfer station, you can take it when you want. It's not out in the street and you take it yourself. Now, there's some people who don't want to do it because they're lazy bums.
Well, Mr. Roberts, I mean, I'd say I'm thank you for your comments, but we are keeping the transfer station. There are two enterprises.
I understand that, but I'm pointing out what's not being pointed out.
But we still.
No,
have-
you're hiding it.
No.
You haven't talked about it.
Currently, there are 5.
So I talked about it.
That's a fair point.
Excellent. Thank you for your
All right.
comments.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We have a
As
motion
one of the ladies.
and a
on
We
second.
have a motion and a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Wait, we gotta go to number 7,
Yeah.
8, 9. 9.
You skipped 7.
I skipped 7. It's a request approval to award the 2024-2025 paving contract to PJ Keating. Mr. Wood.
So moved.
Second.
Just a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Bids came in lower, so we had a little bit extra money to do a couple extra roads.
Correct.
And we're also gonna be able to parlay that. You're gonna come back to us if and when we get the state money with other projects can you potentially outline some of those other streets?
I can come back and outline the other streets for you. The thing is, I have to put my application request in with the state DOT, submit my proposals, get them awarded, and then I can come back and tell you what the other couple roads will be.
Okay, so that their award is contingent on us spending this money or allocating this money to be spent first.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And this is I'm just doing some of this because people hear things and see things, they don't read things. These are early projects. This is not a September through October thing. This is July and August. We're going to be paving
Correct.
all through Island Park. So people really need to know this part.
Correct.
So there's going to be some disruptions for Island Park residents, but it's for a good thing.
It is.
And 2 other quick questions, and these are specifically for you. There are at least 2 new houses going up on a couple of these roads. Can we make sure we contact them directly to make sure their water lines are in before we could pave the road?
We've already notified the water department, the gas company and National Grid Electric. So everyone's already been notified what roads we're getting paved and they have X amount of time to put their utilities in. So we'll definitely just double check with the water department, make sure that they're in because we don't like cutting the roads either.
Just, there's a house right on the corner of Mason. Brand new.
I'll make sure that's.
Well, back in the day, Mr. Hamilton, you couldn't cut for 5 years.
We have 10.
And they would always kind of waive it, but I always said no. I mean, they saw what was happening, but anyway.
We have
We
a
have a 10-year
motion
moratorium.
and a
on
second.
those.
What's that?
We have a 10-year moratorium,
Oh, wow.
Unless it's an emergency, like the water main blows up, but.
or it's necessity. They have to demonstrate that they can't put a well on that property before the water department's a necessity.
But
Gas is not a necessity.
getting a lot of roads done for at least more than we anticipated, which
I
is
think
good.
this is great. What the state's doing, I think this is great for the town.
I agree. So we have a motion and a second to award the paving. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Correspondence?
We got all the correspondence and received the place on file.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Future meetings, next meeting is Tuesday, May 28th, followed by June 10th, and then June 12th will be our the budget public hearing.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you all. See you on the 28th.